Welcome to Speakernomics, the official podcast of the National Speakers Association. Created by speakers for speakers. It's your fast track to sharper skills, bigger impact, and a smarter speaking business. Subscribe and download using the link below. And step into the spotlight.
One of the things that we need to contend with in business, as well as being in speakers as business people, is the finance, money, taxes. How do we make all those ends meet? How do we do the right thing in the right way? We have to know how to price our services. What do we do? How to keep it in order? Well, that's a subject that sometimes flabbergasts some of us as CPAs, but as CPAs and as well as working with them. Now, CPAs can help us a lot on that. And today, you are in for a treat because I have Carl Seidman joining us from his home up in Chicago. He is a CPA, a real one. He sat for the exam, earned it and all that, keeps it updated and all that. He's also a CSP. So we know he's a person that we can hear from. So we're pretty lucky today to have this guy with us right now. Plus, I know him from the cigar peg. He is one wonderful guy that I've known for many years. He shoots from the hip. He gives us real good information. Carl, welcome aboard here at Speakernomics.
Thank you so much, Terry. Thanks for having me.
Well, this is such an important topic, and sometimes we don't study those things as much in school. I know for me, I had the MBA and I had to really learn that stuff. It was not my first cup of tea when I got it, but I figured it out eventually. But as speakers, we need to know about pricing. We need to know about how to adjust, how to make sure that we have enough money. And I found out there was a big concept that I'd like you to talk to us a little bit about of net versus gross. I understand those are two different numbers. Tell us that picture and why we as speakers need to be aware of the financial picture, taxes, and how to put it all together.
Yeah, you bet. So I think one of the biggest struggles that non-financial, non-accounting people have, especially in the professional speaking world, is they didn't grow up knowing the numbers. They didn't grow up understanding the financial side of their business. As it relates to gross versus net, there's one thing of how much money you are getting through your fees. But then there's something else of net is how much are you actually keeping? So it's one thing to be able to charge great rates and to be busy, but it's another thing to actually have a standardized business, a good understanding of what your numbers are, and be able to have enough profitability that you've got cash in your accounts in the event that there's some seasonality and your business slows down, or you want to be able to invest in new equipment, or you want to be able to hire people. So it really comes in both sides of how much are you billing, but also how much are you keeping after you're spending your money on your expenses.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've got to do it. So what's a good way to start preparing for that for any business leader, but particularly for those of us who are professional speakers where we don't always have a regular check coming in every month or every week. Sometimes there's a whole lot. It's the old feast or famine thing. How do we adjust for that? What have you found works best for professional speakers?
Yeah, let me position this in a few different ways. So first of all, when I talk finance and accounting with professional speakers or other professional service providers, there's often an intimidation factor of, well, I don't really come from this background. Numbers intimidate me. Money gets me uncomfortable. It makes me feel very insecure. But you don't have to be a CPA. You don't have to be an accountant to be able to put some numbers on a page or into a spreadsheet. So what I recommend to people who want to get a better grasp on their numbers is put down your fees, low, medium, high. Put down the number of gigs, engagements, consulting clients, training programs, whatever it is that you do, and simply multiply your rates by your volume. Do that month after month for the full extent of the year, and then also put this into what I just call low and high scenarios. So you might say, well, on average, X, that's my rate. But sometimes it goes up to Y, sometimes it goes down to Z. I want to be able to see the floor and the ceiling of what my revenue is going to be. At the same time, you're going to want to do the same thing on the expenses. What are you doing for travel? What are you doing for internet? What are you doing for marketing? What are you doing for labor? All of the different kinds of costs and expenses that you're incurring on a monthly and then yearly basis, can you put that down on paper or could you put that into a spreadsheet? Once you put that over 12 months, that really gives you your idea of what a year-long income statement or P&L looks like. And when you take your revenue minus your expenses, that gives you your take home. So again, it doesn't need to be something that's overly sophisticated that a finance or an accounting person might do. It might just simply be taking out a pen, writing down your numbers, and getting a good idea of what your pathway looks like.
Yeah, so you got a good handle on where we're going, what we're doing on that. What are some good ways to practically do that when you're out there and you're wondering, I don't know how much money we're going to get, I don't know what's coming from. What are some good ways to put that in place and start planning for that?
So when it comes to the revenue side, I think it's one thing to say, well, this is how much I'm going to make, assuming all of this business comes in the door. But it's another thing to be able to say, well, I'm not actually going to land those opportunities unless I'm making phone calls, unless I'm marketing, unless I'm doing things on social media, unless I'm doing webinars. So unless you have just a remarkable standing out in the market where everybody's knocking on your door and sending you emails and giving you phone calls, you've got to be able to invest money in your business to be able to grow that presence and that reputation, thus generating the revenue. And so what we often do in our business is we think this is the breakdown of B2B revenue. This is the breakdown of B2C revenue. This is the breakdown of training, speaking, online courses, etc. But then we have drivers on the expense side, on the operation side of how is this going to contribute to the revenue that we are targeting? So it sometimes becomes a little bit of a circular process of saying, what do we think is going to continue just as ongoing business? But then what are we investing in the business to be able to grow? And that gives us the financial picture that we want for the next 12 months.
Yeah, so we're putting it together in a methodical way. Looking at that. Now, another thing that enters in the picture is expenses. We know, we've heard expenses that are directly related to you earning a living for your business. These are generally speaking deductible in most cases, sometimes an investment. Tell us a little bit about what would be and what wouldn't be deductible, and including something I've heard about. I'm not an accountant, but heard of this thing called a Section 179 under the Internal Revenue Code that could be handy for purchasing certain equipment that might be deductible. Rather than me talk about that, because I'm certainly not giving any financial advice here, but what are your thoughts on that? Just general words of advice.
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to give financial advice here. I'm going to
Right.
give just some guidance. But for the most part, expenses or costs that you're incurring that are directly connected to revenue generation in your business would generally be deemed to be a tax deduction. So, for example, if you have a microphone or a camera that you use 100% in your business for the generation of revenue, that would be deemed to be a business expense, deductible on your tax return. Another one, which might be a little bit gray, is your own travel expenses, right? So you might travel to a certain city. Some of that might be deductible if it is, in fact, for business expenses. But if you're going to visit one of your relatives, that obviously would not be a business expense. So it's really important to be tracking of your expenses and your costs, which of these are associated with your business, which of these are not. And what's wonderful is there's a lot of really good software out there now that allows you to quite literally take your smartphone, take a picture of a receipt, and be able to code this in your accounting system as you need. And by the time it's time to do your taxes, it starts to become very easy to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Keeping track of those records, I hear, are very important and knowing what we can do. Now, also, I know we're not giving any tax advice here, but according to the IRS, I understand that if things are done, say you're going to your place to where there's a convention, a business convention, maybe you're speaking there, maybe you're participating with it, and you're speaking for 3 days, let's say hypothetically. If you go there for 3 days, and by the way, you wanted to see some friends in that town as well, if you saw them in the evening, but you did the work for 7, 8 hours in the day, would the expense still be deductible?
I think it really depends. What I tend to do is even when I'm traveling, if I'm using my car to go to a certain location where I have business, I'm tracking the amount of mileage that I would have specifically for business purposes, and the mileage I would be taking for personal reasons, I would not be including that in my business expense.
Mhm.
So that's why I believe it's just really important to have good, clean, organized books and systems so that when it comes time to either close your books for the month or do your taxes, it doesn't start to become murky and gray.
Wise words of advice. I think that's good. Are there any particular software packages or AI tools that you have found to be particularly helpful? Not that we're endorsing any of them, but just some
Right.
that could be a good program like this one or like that one that can help us as speakers to keep track of those expenses that are there.
Yeah, you bet. So historically, I was very fond of a software platform called Expensify. Expensify was an early leader in what I'll just call digitized expenses. So again, you can tie this to your credit card, you can snap pictures with your smartphone, you can code this to whatever expense categories, and then also with a lot of the AI features existing within the software, it can look at your receipts and detect what it thinks those expenses are. So, for example, if you go to St. Louis, you go to dinner, it will take a look and say, well, this looks like a dinner receipt. I'm going to classify this as meals and entertainment. It will look at $35 worth of refueling on your rental car and it says, this looks like a gas station. I'm going to classify this as fuel expense. Now, when I started evolving my own systems, I'm currently on Zoho Books. There's also
Yes.
Zoho Expense, and there's a lot of other Zoho plugins. So it took me a little bit of anxiety that I had to go through to leave Expensify because I loved that software, but Zoho Expense is what we use now, and it's very similar to what Expensify does. And then the last piece, Terry, as it relates to AI, this past year, this was the first time that I actually used AI to do my own taxes. So
Oh,
what
how'd
I
that work
had,
out?
it actually worked out really well. It saved me a ton of time. So what I
Hmm.
had done was I took my expense reports, downloaded them into Excel. I went into my business credit card account, downloaded all that into Excel, and I uploaded 1 month at a time up into, I forgot even which LLM I was using. I think I was using Gemini.
Hmm.
I uploaded it into Gemini and said, here's January, here's February, here's March. Please organize this, please reconcile it, and then please identify those expenses that I need to investigate further. So it saved me a ton of time that in the past I would have had to put two spreadsheets right next to each other. This did it very, very quickly.
Nice. Well, if someone's listening to that going, hey, I think I need to try some of that. I don't know much about accounting and that. What would you recommend for a good step to get started in that particular area?
So, one again, going back, it doesn't have to be intimidating and it doesn't have to be perfect the way that a CPA might do it. Putting together your revenues, your expenses, that's probably good enough. And that's in fact what I had done for many years before I had started outsourcing my own bookkeeping to an actual bookkeeper. So it's just what is the amount of money that you're making? What is the amount of money that you're spending? What is the amount of money that you're keeping? And then if you can, identify what are the key categories of expenses or revenue in your business. The reason why I suggest doing that instead of saying, oh, just all revenue, all expense is for my business, again, we have business to business live training, on demand training, business to consumer, live training, on demand training. We've got self paced courses. We've got all these different revenue channels. And without breaking it into those segments, we wouldn't have the kind of insights into the analytics that help us with our marketing and our effort. On the expense side, you're probably going to want to break this down by travel. Maybe you even break travel down by lodging, airfare, rental cars, meals, etc. You're probably going to want to break it down by labor, contractors, marketing, perhaps equipment, software. I mean, all these different kinds of categories. It helps you understand where the money's coming from, where the money's going.
Yeah, it's a good idea to do that. It seems like it's particularly good. Are there any particular AI focused accounting packages that are out? Something that's really utilizing AI?
There are, and especially, at the time of this conversation, there's obviously so much happening so quickly, and
Yeah.
now we have connections that we can make from AI engines into the accounting software itself. As somebody who is deeply involved in accounting and finance on the corporate side, as well as what's going on with AI, we can now have seamless integrations between the bookkeeping software and the AI engines behind it. Much of our finance, despite using Zoho Books and Zoho Expense, we still do a lot of forecasting, modeling, and budgeting in Microsoft Excel.
Yep.
Microsoft Excel has Copilot embedded in it. We now have ChatGPT as well as Claude that are now existing inside of Excel. So we don't have to do anything super advanced. Everything is sitting natively within the platforms we want.
Very nice. Makes it a little bit easier every year than when April the 15th rolls around for our personal taxes.
That's
Those kind of
right.
things are good. Well,
That's
while we
right.
got you here, go ahead. You want to say something?
No, I was just going to say what's really nice about these tools is if we're keeping current on this throughout the year, or we're thoughtful of what we want to be able to do at increasing speed and efficiency, you're right. It doesn't have to come down to, tax time and we're scrambling to get it done.
Yeah, exactly. Well, while we got you here, for all of us speakers who are listening, want to find out some of the things that you have learned through the years teaching and helping people. If you could give us, say, 3 to 5 errors that you see professional speakers tend to make regarding their accounting, their finance, the taxes, common mistakes that are there that we could probably avoid if we did this and this. Again, we're not giving any specific tax advice, but from what you've seen from your years of experience, what would you see are a few of those major mistakes that professional speakers are making?
Yeah, I think the first is trying to overcomplicate your systems in order to do something that doesn't need to be hard. You don't need some really robust, super advanced bookkeeping software. But then at the same time, it's not simply just writing things down on paper and putting it into a shoebox. You could do this in Excel. You could do this in Google Sheets. You could do this in QuickBooks. It doesn't have to be remarkably complicated. Don't let the intimidation factor push you in one direction or the other. Just start getting a good grasp on your finances. A second piece that I would add is keep current. So, Terry, you mentioned just a few moments ago of when you start getting close to tax time, so you're not scrambling, do it every single month. We currently
Hmm.
outsource our accounting and our bookkeeping to a third-party bookkeeper. I'm a CPA. I could do this myself. It's not a great use of my time, attention, and energy, but
Yeah,
she does it. She closes our books every single month so that
nice.
by the time we're at either the end of the year or tax time, it's not now we have to close every single month of the year. Another really important point that I hope anyone listening to takes very seriously is take a look at your trends. So it's one thing to be able to say, what did we do this last month? But how does that compare to this same month last year? How does it compare to the quarter before? Are you getting busier? Are you charging more? Are you drying up? Are you charging less? Is your revenue coming from different sources that you weren't really expecting? When you're walking in the dark and you don't have that kind of data, you're kind of just guessing. You're using your hunch, you're using your intuition, and it's far smarter and far more supportive of your business if you actually have tangible data to work off of. And then the last piece that I would add is even though it may be speculative, it's a good idea to put together a budget or a forecast.
Yes.
So take a look of what you think your business is going to look like 12 months from now. Are you going to be right? No, you're not. You're going to be wrong. But it's still going to give you an idea as to where's your money going to come from? Where are you going to be spending? How much are you actually going to be taking home? What months of the year do you typically slow down? What months of the year do you really get busy? And you're probably going to have to say no to some opportunities. So without having the kind of data and the intelligence that is tangibly in front of you, again, you're kind of walking in the dark and you're hoping for the best. Putting numbers into bookkeeping software, putting numbers into a forecast is going to give you a whole lot more confidence in the direction of your business.
Yeah, very good words of advice. Those are quite helpful. And I've got another way I want to finish up this particular interview here, getting some projection forward. But before we do that, I know some people are going to be watching this and thinking, I need to get some help on this. I need someone that can point me in the right direction. Carl, if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, the two best sources are to go to my LinkedIn and just look me up there, active every single day. Send me a direct message and I'm happy to talk to you. In addition, you're welcome to come to my website and book a call, website being seidmanfinancial.com. And
And
I
please
will,
spell that for us because we know sometimes there can be a little confusion on that. The
you
the
bet.
broadcast journalist in me says, let's make sure we spell that carefully.
Right, that's Seidman, S is in Sam, EID is in dog, MAN, financial.com.
Very good. All right. Well, then, as we get ready to move on here and move forward with it, I'd like you to sit down and think about where we're going, what we're doing right now. And if a person is out there who is a professional speaker and they're thinking, okay, I want to get things done, I want to do it right, what kind of a roadmap or steps could you give us? Say, again, 3 to 5 steps that would be really good to get the financial house in order and to make sure that we're set moving forward for whatever's going to happen.
Sure. So I think that anyone who is starting out in this business or someone who just wants to take it to the next level, in order to have predictable revenue and predictable expenses, you got to be able to run your business like a business, not like it's a practice. And when it comes to running like a business, it's getting your systems in order, it's getting your processes in order. But then also when it comes to growth and positioning for the next months and years, I often say to people, if you're starting out, say yes to the opportunities. But as you start developing and figuring out where you are, where your authority stands, what your market is, then you're going to want to start saying no, perhaps more often than you're saying yes. Because the more you start saying yes to everything, you're going to find yourself moving in all of these different directions. And remember, I said you're going to want to take a look at your revenue and how it's split out by categories. You might have 20 different categories. You probably don't want 20 different categories. You want a few. Going from there, it often means niching into the area in which you have your authority. So in the very beginning of my professional speaking, I was saying yes to a lot of different opportunities until I started realizing what my niche was. What was my specialization? What was I famous for? And perhaps counterintuitive is the more you focus on your authority, your expertise, your niche, that's what you're going to become famous for. And that's what you want to become known for. Even though it means you're taking a much smaller part of the market, you might be taking a much larger part of that small part of the market. And I think that that strategically is one of the best ways to grow. And then finally, at least in terms of my own marketing, my own exposure to build consistency, is when I put myself out there online, on LinkedIn, through webinars, it's all about showcasing, not telling, not selling. It's showing what you can do, your own expertise and authority through other people watching what you can do. That sells you, not necessarily actively selling yourself.
Carl, that is not only good financial advice, good tax advice, but also good marketing advice. So we thank you, sir, for doing that. And we appreciate you taking your time to help us here at Speakernomics. And we'll look forward to seeing you again sometime, the Cigar Peg, where you and I see each other regularly, or elsewhere in NSA. Thank you very much for being with us, sir.
You bet. Thank you so much, Terry.
And for those of you watching this, think about what Carl said. This guy is real. I know him and I've talked to him in public as well as one-on-one. He is genuine, very kind, very knowledgeable. And yes, he is a real CPA. Okay, he's got one of those things. He earned it and paid the price and keeps it renewed, all those kind of good things. He's a wonderful guy. Get to know him. Bounce over to his website, look around, and for your own finances, think about what needs to be done. Check with your financial professionals that you're working with to make sure your house is in order. Carl's available to help out in many different ways, so keep his name handy. I'm Terry Brock, and for the team here at Speakernomics, we thank you for joining us and wish you a very good day ahead.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Speakernomics. If you want more bookings, credibility, and connections, your NSA community is waiting for you. Join NSA today. Click the link below and follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and download this podcast wherever you listen.